What caused you to realize gender identity rights were a problem? When and why did you get involved in activism on this issue?
Definitely sports. So what's happening in sports now and related to trans ideology is devastating. And I'm absolutely angry with it, that men who are trans-identified as women, they are coming to women's sports. They win in many categories, many kinds of sports, and they claim their rights to compete along with women. Of course, having physical differences, and I'm angry that speaking against of it is because it's becoming not politically correct. It's actually against of common sense of biological characteristic, and it's actually against women's rights, and it's misogynistic, taking into account how long did it take for women to fight for sports, to fight for some kinds of sports where they were not represented. So, and now men are coming again to take sports from us. So, and you know, there is a quite well-known girl in Russia. She is an MMA fighter, and she was fighting for the right to have mixed fight with men, and she was refused to do it. But in Olympic sports, in professional sports, it's becoming normal. I mean, in the world, and I believe in Russia we will have the same thing in I don't know, in a few years or in decades. And I feel sad for women, for girls who will be out of the sports, who will be not representative sports because of invasion of trans-identified men.
Hi, I have to say I was a bit slow on this issue, but I was first put right by Dr. Julia Long and started to educate myself. Sheila Jeffrey's wonderful books, of course, a good place to start, and I learned a lot from those. What really convinced me was my own personal experience of rape and violence against women, and the thought that when I was in those awful situations of weakness and trauma after enduring rape and violence, that I might be forced to confide in a man or even take shelter in a space where there was a man, made me realize that the impossibility of it all. You cannot pretend to be you can pretend to be something you're not, and you can persuade and bully people to agree with you if you're powerful enough. But unfortunately, that doesn't change the truth. So I was very much helped by the women who helped me refound Object, people like Ruth Greenberg and Kate Graham, UK radical feminists. And it seemed that this was the issue that nobody dared take up. So we did. That's how I got there.
Yeah, I already mentioned how I saw what was happening in the goddess women's spirituality community. You know, this division that was happening, the attacking of women who had been elders and teachers for many years, because they still believed that there's the reality of biological sex. And then it hit me very hard personally in 2015 when I had a student who had studied with me for 13 years, body-based work, movement meditation that I teach, which is sourced, which connects to the distinct powers of the female body through the womb and connecting to the heart and third eye. This is not woo-woo stuff. It might sound like that to people who are not familiar with moving meditation. It's very concrete, it's very potent, it's subtle body work. Well, this student had worked with me for 13 years, plus my associate, and I was starting to mentor her to teach this practice that I teach, the tantric dance of feminine power. And she told me at one point that she's a queer woman she's a queer woman with a vagina, and she's proud of that. And I thought, well, what does that mean? I didn't understand the jargon. I didn't understand queer theory. And eventually, when I posted on Facebook, you know, that I believe there's a biological basis for sex to determine what your sex is, you know, it's not an identification, she kind of flipped out and she dropped out of the work. And I was stunned how a woman who had been so connected to her body, specifically the womb, could buy this lie. And that showed me how powerful this ideology is, how powerful the pressures are of her queer community, and how fearful people are to stand against the great tide of the media and what's, you know, the liberal, you being a good person. You're terrified to be torn from the tribe. That's atavistic. That goes to the very core of our need to belong. It's just survival. And it showed me how much pressure is on people who are enmeshed in this lie to stick with the lie. I wish I could name I can't remember the name of the psychological experiment. It's a famous one where there's 12 people sitting there and they're all in on it except the 12th person, and there's these lines on the chalkboard, and obviously one is shorter than the other, and everybody lies. They're all in on the game, you know. Everybody lies. Oh, that's the short one, and then it comes to the last person who doesn't know that this is an experiment, and goes along with the lie, even though it's obvious that they're lying and they know they're lying. That's how to the core of our need to belong this goes. So anyway, that woke me up, and after that I started reading articles. I've read 3,000 articles now. I've read some of Sheila Jeffrey's books. I sent a 22-page, along with my husband, we wrote a 22-page treatment to our Senator, Jeff Merkley, who is the co-sponsor of the Equality Act in the USA, which is not passed yet. And so that's how it hit me personally.
There was no, you know, like a particular situation that suddenly made me a gender critical activist. It happened to me kind of naturally with time. I guess when I realized the decoherency of this ideology, again, first of all, it goes against what I fight for, and I fight for women. And if it goes against women, it goes against me. It's like, it's everything I said previously here. It's everything many activists and many authors said previously. I never was a huge supporter of this ideology. Something was always feeling off about it. And this one thing that we're fighting against is gender roles. And again, this trans ideology brings us to the gender roles, that you can wear long hair and makeup and be acknowledged as a woman, you know? Well, I don't know. I just like, when I saw this community, this trans community started to grow bigger and bigger, and it started to face some, you know, like controversies, a lot, like around, like in the internet, with some media persons being canceled because they, I don't know, mispronounced somebody or something like that. I started to read more about it, because again, it was always like, it was something off about it. I started to read more about it, critically analyzing and forcing myself to analyze this critically, like what happens. And I understood that that's a very big issue. It's like, back then I wasn't really, I didn't see that as a threat, you know? Like, I saw it just, I mean, trans people do the thing they do. And of course in Ukraine, there were like a very few trans people. There wasn't even like a community back then. So once I realized that that's a very big issue, once I realized that's a very big cultural issue and how media portrays that, I realized that it is a threat to us. And yeah, actually pop culture really good at twisting things and portray them in a certain way. And that's really interesting how within like 5 years, I think, even in Ukraine, situation really changed in the youth community, like people from 15 to 20 something years old. it's really interesting that they don't allow us to second guess and to question what they feed us. So yeah, I think it kind of happened to me naturally. Thank you.